Sneak Preview of SEO in 2026. Hello and welcome to the December 2025 edition of the Majestic SEO Panel, a sneak preview of SEO in 2026. I'm your host, Bain, and joining me today are four wonderful guests. So let's meet them, starting off with Jono.
Oh, sheesh. Hi. I wasn't ready for that.
You're dancing.
Yeah, hi.
For audio listeners.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, we're going to make sure they get that. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. What a treat.
Thanks so much, Jono. Where can people find you, Jono? Would you like to just inform people maybe?
Sure. All over the internet and in this incredible book that we're going to be talking about.
Just search the web for Jono. Any particular platform. We're not Googling it nowadays, are we?
No, we are searching it up.
Emina, thanks so much for joining us as well. Who are you and where are you from?
Hi, so I do need an introduction because Jono he doesn't even need an introduction anymore. So I'm the head of digital marketing at Vixen Digital, and you can find me mostly on LinkedIn or on our website, vixendigital.com. So yeah.
Superb. Well, thanks for joining today. Filipa, hello.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Filipa. I'm currently doing SEO and also ASO at Suplus, which is an e-commerce for the pet industry. And you can find me, on LinkedIn or on my website, seolipa.com.
Thank you so much for joining, Filipa. And also with us today is Anthony.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anthony, co-founder and MD of Studio Hawk here in the UK. I'm glad to be part of this for the third year in a row. And people can find me on LinkedIn at Anthony Barone or at studiohawk.co.uk.
Third year in a row. Wow. Who in the panel, if anyone, has been on 5 years in a row? We've done it for 5 years now. This is the 5th year. Jono's tentatively. Maybe. You must say something good, Jono, if you're invited back quite so often. So it's great.
I'm just alphabetically first. That's the secret. It's like look up somebody with a name that begins with A. It's fine.
Oh, I knew there was a reason. But thanks to everyone for joining. So these are four of the contributors to the forthcoming book, SEO in 2026. We're recording this live on December the 3rd, 2025. So as of then, in a week's time, on December the 10th, the book is due for publication. SEOin2026.com is where you want to go for more information about that. We have about 64 incredible of the contributors joining us live for launch day. This is a special pre-show. These four contributors here today couldn't quite make the 10th, but it's wonderful that they can come on this particular quick show instead. Now, it's an enormous book. It's a book that's going to be roughly 700 pages long. It's going to be about 230,000 words long. So there's a lot to consume between December the 10th and Christmas. You have to get through it. That's the rule. It has to be read before Christmas. And hopefully you can join us for that particular live stream. But today we're going to just summarize the four tips from the four great guests that we've got today that they shared as part of the book, and also get their thoughts on maybe some other tips that also are included within this SEO in 2026 book. So, Jono, alphabetically, and for no other reason, would you perhaps like to start off today's episode by sharing your tip for SEO in 2026?
Sure. So my tip is that we should stop accepting and normalizing technical mediocrity. I think for a long time, we've all just kind of learnt to live with the web being a bit janky and websites having loads of error pages and broken links and 20 megabyte JavaScript files and vendor blocking, blah, 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 blah. And all of this has become normal. And both as users and SEOs, we just seem to be okay with that, right? Like I've added the thing to the cart. Oh, the page is frozen. Oh, I've gone back. Oh, it's broken. And like, why is that okay? And for a long time, I think it's been okay because Google has been quite tolerant of that sort of thing, and we've got away with it. And that's fine. That's cool. But now the world starts to change, and agentic systems and whatever comes next are going to be far less error tolerant, and users' expectations will increase. And neither people nor these systems will wade through these bad experiences. I think many businesses and websites are saying that they're struggling because of increasing competition or changing markets or the rise of AI. And actually, the reality is many of them are failing because they're held together with little more than a hope and masking tape. And they're not doing the hard work of actually investing in their core architecture and making sure that they have the right tech stacks and that they're not just kind of living in condemned properties. So yeah, I'm super frustrated that we just kind of normalize that the web is bad. Maybe it's time to do something about that.
So, Jono, how do you start dejankifying a website?
Yikes. Well, I think as with many things that we'll touch on in this, SEO type people are best positioned to have these difficult conversations. I think we've got quite good at talking about content strategy and digital PR and maybe broadly technical SEO. I think many organizations aren't prepared or equipped or educated to understand the problem and how bad it is. I think we have the tooling and the expertise to say, you know what, that 4-second wait for that JavaScript file to load is going to cost you user experience, which is going to impact how users perceive you, which is going to impact how Google perceives you, which is going to impact whether or not you're recommended by LLMs, etc. We have the connections, the remit, the terminology, the understanding, the connections to have those hard conversations. And actually just being able to challenge people like, hey, developers who everybody loves, and say, you know, it's not okay to use entirely client-side rendered stuff for your key content. And, you know, it's not okay to accept a 4-second LCP score, and to be more bullish on not accepting that kind of mediocrity and the normalization of it. And yeah, having the hard conversations with senior business leaders to say, you need to invest, you need to reskill, you need to invest more in talent, you need to hold people accountable. For far too long, we've just let devs do dev, and the world is not good as a result.
Wonderful. That was a summary of Jono's tip for SEO in 2026. Obviously, the whole episode will be available on SEO2026.com. All the episodes, all the podcast episodes, the video episodes will be published 5 days a week from the 8th of December onwards. So from Monday onwards, from next week we're talking about. And the book, of course, will be published on the 10th of December. And Emina, you are the next panelist that I'd like to ask you the question. What was your number one SEO tip for 2026?
So my SEO tip was really going back to kind of the basics. So focusing on audiences, just so we can avoid being bogged down, really, because there's so many shiny objects around that we all want to play with, and I'm first in line for them. However, it does mean that we're in danger of kind of forgetting the basics and the foundational stuff, which is your audience, really. And we talked about toilets, didn't we, David? In my tip, there was a lot of toilet mentioned for some reason.
Okay, would you like to provide the context, maybe?
So basically, I studied development studies. I have an MA in development studies, and every time I think about marketing, I remember how one of my favorite teachers was talking about a program called Community-Led Total Sanitation. So basically, there was a lot of aid agencies who went to African countries and built toilets that nobody used. And for years and years, they've spent a lot of budget on these toilets that nobody was using, till somebody had a really good idea that turned into this community-led total sanitation, where they went into the community and did what's called community mapping, which is a participatory technique where they got them to basically map out their local areas and where they go to the toilet, where the rivers are, where their water supply is, where their kids play. So they've done the mapping, and they themselves, so the community themselves, understood finally why they shouldn't be defecating near the water supply, near where kids play, and so forth. So it's kind of this facilitation process rather than going top down. And I see that in marketing all the time. We always are trying to build toilets the way that we want toilets to be built, rather than what our audience actually wants. So hopefully that's it.
And what if our audience don't know what's best? Because I'm always reminded, what was the quote? Was it Steve Jobs? Or maybe I'm thinking of Ford. I think that was Steve Jobs quoting Henry Ford,
Yeah.
saying, you know, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have they would have told me they wanted a faster horse instead of actually a car.
So there's a difference there. The African communities didn't want the toilets. The toilets were built before because, you know, there's a difference between facilitation and there's a difference between not kind of listening to your audience at all. So the way that you approach marketing is understanding your audience. And yes, maybe in understanding your audience, you might discover that actually what they want isn't what they actually need. And then it's your job to come in and basically educate and facilitate so that those toilets are actually built the right way. So I don't know why I keep on talking about toilets, honestly.
Okay, I'm looking forward to next year's analogy. But thanks for sharing that. Filipa, what was your tip for SEO in 2026?
Oh, okay. Hi. Yes. So, you know, following some of the other tips, like, you know, expand your horizons, sorry. My tip for 2026 was to also focus your efforts on ASO. That's App Store optimization. And that's obviously only valid if you do have an app or if you're thinking about, you know, getting one. I've been doing a lot of ASO lately. And, you know, I think it can go really well hand in hand with SEO. It is really important for you to have, you know, like an holistic presence online. Also now that even the events that you create on the App Store, like in-app events, promotional content, they can now also be ranked on Google and LLMs. And, you know, to make sure that not only your website is optimized, but also, you know, the app itself for the app stores is really important. So I really decided to focus my tip there.
Do not enough brands have apps nowadays? Do you think most brands should have an app?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends, right? It's not a tip that it's valid for, you know, everyone. So I'm working in e-commerce mostly, so I do really see a value there. Also, not only to attract customers, but also to retain them. So I see it as a really valid channel, let's say. I think in what we can see from our data is that the actual customer, you know, is most likely to be retained if they have installed the app. So that's kind of like good results there. But of course, you know, it might not apply to all of the businesses, right? But it's definitely something to, you know, work on, or at least making sure that someone is working on it in your project, company, whatever.
And when you're reviewing an app, what are the main areas that they're missing out on when it comes to not optimizing effectively?
Yeah, of course. So like you can optimize the keywords just like on SEO, but you know, have in mind that the tools that you use to do the keyword research and the way people search on, you know, the app stores or Google or LLM is really, really, really different. But now users are also using LLMs to find apps. So, you know, that goes a bit like all over the place, really. But on the app itself, you can definitely do, you know, a keyword research to see how the users search for you. And then you also have the more creative part in terms of like, you know, the screenshots that you are showing, the icon, the activities that you are, you know, promoting to the users. So it's not only, you know, the keywords, but it's also like very visual and what you show to the users on the app stores. And now also the LLMs. So we cannot ignore that, of course, but yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Filipa. Anthony, what was your number one SEO tip for 2026?
My number one SEO tip for this year was avoiding shiny toy syndrome. And as we know, with all the AIO, GEO, LEMEO, EIEIO, avoid the shiny toy syndrome because everyone's just trying to sell like a platform or a tool or something. And look, a lot of us at Studio Hawk, we deal with small to medium businesses and some enterprise. And at that scale, everyone's asking the question, can I get on top of AI? Can I get this? Can I get that? Right? but they're missing the basics. You don't need a Ferrari, you need a Toyota right now. And a lot of people just want to jump on because their C-suite saw this article in Forbes and we need to be on top of AI. It's like, your website can't even like do the basics. So that was my tip, was to, SEO fundamentals, SEO principles, but having an eye on AI, because, we're in 2025. If we're sitting here in 27, 29, 30, hey, it could be a different ballpark. And we're already seeing some user habits change. But at the moment, Google's still $1 trillion company. Bing still around. People are still searching for things. But as a business, focus on the SEO fundamentals. You don't need a Ferrari right now. Most people need a Toyota. And in the UK, they've barely got a budget for a Toyota. So focusing on the fundamentals to move the needle for these businesses.
Are you okay? Is there a time at the moment that you're actually looking at a website and you're thinking, okay, it's time to move on and actually optimize for AI search or some other opportunity there, Anthony? Or does every business really just need to focus on the fundamentals now?
All contexts. Like some businesses, their websites are flying. Like we work with a lot of e-commerce, so like some of their websites are flying. They're built really well. All of that stuff. Keep an eye on it. But again, the major driver of traffic and of revenue is coming through the usual platforms, usual suspects, right? So, okay, what are you going to do? Can you chunk your content? Make sure you chunk your content, Jono. For me, it's just always about the basics. It's always about, like, a lot of people, like football, get the basics right. And a lot of people just want to jump on the shiny toy. They want to jump on the new thing because they don't want to be left behind. So I think, like, look, keep an eye on the updates of what's going on in the industry. Keep an eye, speak to your agency, speak to your internal teams, what's happening. But what I don't want people to do is rip out or rip apart plans that your internal team or your agencies have to, improve yourself organically, and then go, yeah, but we need to rip all this apart because, like, we got two queries and two forms from ChatGPT. So we better throw out our whole SEO. So that's one thing that I want to stress, is that's why I like the shiny toy angle. I'm not saying, like, don't, completely throw yourself under a rock and don't look at ChatGPT and all of that. But a lot of businesses with so much on their plates, and they've got to market on so many different channels and do so many different things. Focus on what will move the needle. And especially for small to medium businesses, what actions will impact the P&L to get you to your goals. And a lot of the AI flash stuff, don't need to worry about that right now. You just need to worry about fixing up your website, doing technical, getting great content out there, building your authority, doing some link building and digital PR, doing the core fundamentals of SEO to be able to improve your position.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Anthony. You got a couple of rounds of applause there for avoiding shiny object syndrome. So that certainly resonated there as well. And I don't know if you're having a go at Jono with regards to chunky content. What was that about,
that was
Jono?
just a joke, because Jono knows that was just a joke. Yeah, just avoid the shiny toy.
Okay, we've got a question here in the chat saying, should I sell my Ferrari and buy a Toyota then?
Hey, Toyotas might last a bit longer, I'll tell you that much. You've got to spend a lot of money to upkeep that Ferrari. But no, for a lot of the SMEs we deal with, sometimes just need to focus on the basics.
Wonderful. Okay, so that was a good summary of everyone's tip there. Obviously, the full episodes are about 50 minutes long or so, and that's for a podcast and video episodes. So yeah, that at SEOin2026.com, be published just from next week or so. Jono, you've had a little opportunity, or everyone's had a little opportunity to just have a look at, to see what everyone else wrote. Was there any particular other tip that really touched you?
Yeah, there were two from, I'm not going to try and pronounce their surnames because I will mangle it, but Isabella and Ed in the kind of multi-channel platform looking outwards. So they both had interesting points talking about discovery is really no longer just Google and no longer even really just search engines, right? And that your website as the ultimate destination that you must focus exclusively on isn't really tomorrow's paradigm, probably not even really today's anymore. Yet we're all still obsessed about where does my page rank with my content when my users are searching. And yet the reality is very much that your branding and messaging and positioning and helpful content, quote unquote, needs to be present across the platforms and locations that users are, which is increasingly YouTube, Twitch, Reddit, all these other places. And even without the AI argument that those systems are consuming that information and using that to influence what they recommend, I think it's increasingly important to consider that people do their own research when they search, and they go on complex, multi-destinational journeys over periods of time on multiple devices. And the decisions they make at the last step are the conclusion of all the things they're exposed to and experience across all those other places. So if your SEO is focused on how do I make my website rank better, you're missing all of that. And we need to collectively get far better at thinking about, when people research, where do they go, what do they see, and how do I influence that? And that might mean having a great community outreach program. It might mean being concerned about what a particular journalist doesn't say in a YouTube video. It might mean understanding the lingo that the kids use on Twitch. Who knows? Right, but those are the kinds of things we should be thinking about, because that's what influences that final step that we've all been so obsessed about. So yeah, I really like those.
Yeah, great. That was Isabella Janjek and Ed Zubrinsky, I think, that you were talking about there as
perfect.
well.
Thank you for catching that.
Yeah, yeah, wonderful tips there as well. Isabella, learn more about the generation you're targeting, and Ed's. I'll just have to search for his particular headline. I don't know if I can find it in a few seconds flat. Step outside the comfort zone of traditional platforms. So wonderful tips there. Emina, what other tip or tips resonated with you?
Oh my God, I of course had problems choosing just one. So a lot of them resonated. If I was to choose two, I would probably choose Lazarina's Toys, of course, because she was talking a lot about, the how of my own philosophy, where we kind of merge, which is this audience research and query semantics. Which I thought was really interesting, and I'm a massive fan of her work anyway. The other one that really stood out is Erin. They said they were talking about finding a community where you can show up as a brand to your audience, and I really love this framing of showing up, because it kind of takes away from, it's not just going in there, selling your stuff and cramming your services down people's throats. It's more, they talk about showing up in a more authentic way. And I think that's definitely where we're going to have to, brands are going to have to put in a bit more into that than they are used to, I think.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's incredible that so many different tips are highlighted when you ask someone what were the other tips that resonated particularly with you. And it's not to say that there's a best 10 tips or best selection of tips within the book. I think it's all depending on your own situation and how it applies to your background, where you want to go in terms of your career, and what activities you happen to be doing in that moment in that particular role. And that's something that I tried to point out in the conclusion, actually. So, my particular role is a bit more kind of creative, kind of producing creative content, and probably because of that, I highlighted the tips that particularly resonated with me, but I was also at pains to point out, look, please remember, I'm not highlighting these as the best tips within the book. Those are the ones that resonated with me, and I'm going to take those tips and attempt to run with them over the next year and find out more about them and ensure that I'm implementing the suggestions within them throughout the year. But that's the way that I approach the book, to highlight the tips that resonate most with me. And perhaps after we hear from Anthony and Filipa just highlighting what individual tip, apart from their own, resonated most with them, perhaps we can just talk a little bit about how you go about reading the book, because some people will read it cover to cover, and other people will just dive straight into something that's right for them. So I'd like that perspective as well. But Filipa, in terms of looking at other people and the other tips, what other tip resonated with you?
Yes, well, I'm the type of person that usually goes straight to the point that I'm looking for usually. But then, of course, I can also have a read through all the other parts. But going a bit with what you were saying, probably I really like this perspective of expanding your horizons. I think from Sean Barber, and how SEO, it's not only about your website anymore, right? It's just like you got to do it right pretty much everywhere. And, it is more and more, and you are incorporating more and more things. So I really, like that approach and really resonated with me. But also, the ones that we're talking about, testing, also because, you can test a lot on SEO. You can also test a lot on ASO. Of course, it also goes hand in hand, but I really like that approach. And then I think it was Aleida that mentioned, be worth of citations. So, making sure that you produce that good content that actually, other sources will want to mention you. And the other sources includes also, LLMs and everything like that. And then, yes,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry, a third one as well. Go for it.
I just wanted to say, because of what Jono said in the beginning, that we should not normalize, trashy, technical websites. I found that, particularly funny. And, just to say that also on the apps, if it's technically trashy, it will also get, penalized, the amount of crashes that the app has and everything like that. So it's also interesting, that a lot of these things apply both on app and web. And yeah, I just found it interesting. And yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, latest tip was one of the ones that I mentioned as well, actually, and I thought Be Worthy of Citations was like the modern version of Be Worthy of getting a link, being linked to. But obviously, no one's going to want to talk about you unless you demonstrate that original thought leadership or a brand that offers distinct, unique, wonderful products and services. So, what are you doing to be worthy? I think that's a really good question to start asking about what you do as an individual brand and a business brand as well. So thanks for sharing that, Filipa. Anthony, any other tip that particularly resonated with you?
One of my favorites, and I really enjoy what she does sometimes around internationalization and international SEO, is Gemma Fontaine. So Gemma has a tip here when it comes around personalizing, standing out in any region through better personalization. And Gemma, who's based in Spain, runs All V Digital, one of my favorites that we get to hang out in Barcelona, really knows her stuff. So going around international SEO, and as we deal with more and more international clients, it's an important thing to be mindful of, so you can actually tailor content or look at the technical SEO and look at everyone's favorite hreflangs and all that stuff, and make sure that people are getting served the right thing in the right location, so don't force automatic redirects and things like that. But yeah, Gemma Fontaine is one of my favorites, and her tip around international SEO is probably one for people to look at.
Superb. Yeah. She's saying personalization is key when it comes to international SEO success. So you were saying, Anthony, don't force people to be automatically redirected. What's the kind of best way of dealing with it? Someone that you think should be on a different website, you simply just you're given the option. Do you have some kind of popover, or you just actually let them browse your website and find whatever they're looking for?
Yeah, have the country selectors in the header and footer, have a bit of a pop-up. Don't make it take the whole page though. Make it slide in so you can send them, we think you're from here. Don't automatically redirect them, because people are using VPNs and other bits and bobs to access certain sites. So that's one of the things. But with Gemma, international SEO, and she deals with a lot of that. And one of my favorites from Spain. So one to take a look at for the people in the audience.
Superb. Jono, I noticed you shared in the chat, create share-worthy content is greater than create helpful content is greater than create great content. Please explain.
Yeah, so touching on the latest point, I think this feels like a journey of evolution. Like we used to say, make great content, and that was the mantra for ages, but it's so ambiguous. And what does great mean, right? So people wrote great articles that were 500 words long and had precisely the right number of keywords, and there was nothing great about them, but we kind of normalized that. And then I think in the last few years, we started to talk much more, for many reasons, about helpful content, but you still end up in the same trap where a business will insist that this listicle is helpful because it suggests that you buy their products. Like, it's not intrinsically or meaningfully helpful. I think share-worthy is a much more interesting term. There is a barrier there. Like, it's much harder to insist that the crappy article that you published is share-worthy, because it's quite evidently not. And I think it also forces you to do less but better, which is probably a good way of thinking about SEO in 2026. So actually investing the resources and understanding your audience and building something that's intrinsically useful, good, helpful, great, and share-worthy feels like probably the minimum quality barrier. And I think that's aligns with a lot of what Aleda's getting at.
Great. So I touched upon the fact that, when I'm reading the book, I'm looking for maybe the top 10 or so contributions that were particularly relevant for me, and then maybe using that as an opportunity to actually to research more into those subjects, then perhaps form that as part of my strategy for the coming year. But it's not necessarily the best way to do it. Maybe the best way to do it is you read it from top to tail. But how does someone go from reading a book like this to actually implementing it and making the most of it over the coming year? Jono, shall we just stay with you for a second? It'd be great to get everyone's thoughts on this. Maybe so I guess this can apply to the book, but also other learning that you do. Maybe listening to podcasts, other content that you consume. How do you filter what you consume to ensure that you're only going to implement the best, the most relevant for what's right for you?
Sure. So I try, and this is super hard, but I try and use it to interrogate my blind spots. So I'm mostly a technical SEO and performance nerd nowadays. So there are areas that I don't touch daily, like internationalization and localization, which I know about and I've done, but they're not in my day-to-day usually. But there are also areas where I'm, for example, skeptical about. So digital PR for a long time, I've not had the best relationship with. I think a lot of it has been used as a crutch in place of doing the hard work and building meaningful brands and building good websites. But now, having read the book, there's all sorts of interesting insight on the evolving role and importance of digital PR in a world where LLMs are influenced, again, as I touched on earlier, by content on Reddit and by what journalists say about you. So if going through this and looking for opinions and the lived experience of people who see the world differently from me forces me to then reevaluate my own perspectives and kind of reshuffle my own thinking. That's super, super valuable. And then, I skim the rest for tips and nuggets that I might have missed to make sure that I can talk on webinars like this and not sound like I don't know what I'm saying.
Oh, I'm sure you never sound like that, Sam. Anthony, shall we go with you next? Because we're always going to you last, so I think it's fair to come to you next. How do you take what you've consumed and decide what's the most important elements to integrate into a strategy?
Usually I go first principles thinking and what makes either priority basis, what's going to make the impact, and then what's the first, second, third order of things. So when we're coming into okay, I could look at alt text optimization. Cool. Who cares? Is that going to move the needle for a lot of the businesses? No. Is creating new services pages, is improving technical SEO, is, for a SaaS business, creating product solution pages and FAQs and creating quality branded and non-branded content about what they do and how they help people. Yeah, sure. That's going to move the needle. So I like to go with, when consuming content or reading stuff or trying to figure out things for a strategy, I always go with, what is your goals? These are the SEO tasks that we need to do to try and help achieve that, and then what the second, third, fourth order effects would be from those things. That's how I usually go about it, but that's how I usually try and approach not just SEO, but just like when you're reading the paper or you're reading other things in life. What is the second, third, and fourth order of things, and what's the impact? What's this going to get me to do? What's the impact of these actions? Is it going to help me to achieve my goals or be a detriment to the goals? So that's how I usually approach things, or we as the team try and approach things, is how can we make the most impact on those goals?
And how often do you revisit what you're talking about there as well? Is this an annual thing, a quarterly thing, or something else?
For clients, we'll be looking at probably quarterly or bi-yearly, and then have a yearly review looking at that, like just general strategy and things like that, just keeping an eye on it. But we like to have constant calls, either weekly, fortnightly, or monthly with the client. Make sure they don't blindside you with a new product launch, or they're just shutting down the business or something. So keeping open comms on that front, and then checking it. You're going to be checking constantly, but then the big ones are going to be quarterly, usually sometimes bi-yearly, and then yearly reviews to make sure, hey, we're keeping on track. Because people are in their own bubbles, people are in their own minds, especially when they're in-house. Things are going on, they're worried about their own things. So when an agency comes along, they might think of you third, fourth, or fifth, right? Not that you'd want it to be that way, but sometimes it happens. So you've got to keep that constant communication, try and keep that constant communication going so you know what's going on, because they sometimes just don't think of you all the time. As much as you'd love people thinking of you all the time, they just don't. So that's where you want to keep on top of the comms, and then that allows you to keep on top of the strategy and then make tweaks where you need to.
Superb. And Filipa, how do you go about deciding, out of everything that you've consumed, what needs to be on the top of your mind and implemented throughout the year?
Yeah, I guess it really depends, in which project or which stage of the project that I'm in, right? Like, and also the resources that I have available. So let's say, if I know that my content team maybe is more available than the technical one, then, I can see also and decide many times based on that, because in the end it's a reality. And even though sometimes I might see there's more, I don't know, priority on one side, sometimes you just gotta go the other way, right? But then in terms of like consuming the content itself and trying to find, for like new solutions or new approaches, what I really try to do is like, as updated as possible, that the information should be as updated as possible. And then, trying to read several points of view and several opinions, because, there is never one formula fits all in SEO, really. So, just trying to find, which point of view might be more similar to my, project or situation, and, really trying to get the best of all of them, and then, trying to find my own, let's say, way to fix the problem. But in the end, I think it's, really, instead of getting just one place, it's like getting several perspectives and several points of view and see what could fit my project the best.
I guess the concern that I've got personally when I'm deciding on what's resonating with me, what's the things I'd like to run with, is do I have a bias against activities that I don't naturally enjoy doing? How do I try to ensure that I'm not actually too biased and I should actually be doing more of the things I don't necessarily want to do?
Well, that's a good one, and of course we are biased. We are all biased at some point, and that will for sure happen. And it happens with me probably more times than I even recognize, right? But I guess probably the trick is also, the more you read about something and the more informed you are, hopefully the easier it will be for you. And then sometimes you have to go against your own, instinct, let's say, and really try to, see that, okay, maybe it can benefit the project. So, really it will get an extra effort for sure if it's something that you do not enjoy as much. But in the end, when you see the results, it can be very, I don't know, fulfilling, let's say. So it can be really good to see the results. But that's a really good point, and it happens a lot. But
And Emina, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, you've kind of covered a lot. I think the bias question is a really big one. And, we always you should try and be aware of your biases, but it's context, isn't it? It's like, it's the same when we say LLM search is super personalized. Well, it is, because, it's like a bias machine, really, in there. If you're logged in, it's just going to show you what you want, what it thinks it needs to show you. So just being aware of that. And when I'm reading stuff, I try and start there as well. But then if I'm working on on an agency level, Anthony is right. It's all about kind of what the goal is, what kind of client I'm working with, and testing. I think that's the other one. It's kind of the next step for me is, this sounds interesting. I've never done that before, but it might work after digging into it a little bit, and then just testing it out and seeing what the result is.
Let's finish off by asking our panel, I'm going to spring this on them, to share their SEO resolution for 2026, and then to share a little bit more about where the listener can find out more about them. Jono, what's your SEO resolution for 2026?
I hate this, and I hate you for making me commit to it, but I think it's going to have to be to embrace all these other channels, the TikToks, the Instagrams, the Twitches, because those are the surfaces where people are influenced. And if I don't, I become an old boomer and I'm out of touch, and I'm still insisting that Google rankings are a thing and that blah 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 blah. So yeah, I think a kind of forced evolution, as has become the norm for SEO, right? I think that's important. I think a decade ago, you would never have predicted that we would have been deeply interested in performance and modal overlays and yada yada. This is just the latest thing. So yeah, I think a forced evolution to get down with the kids on TikTok is probably the right plan. Where can you find me? But I guess on TikTok now. Yeah, I'll get that set up at some point. In the meantime, jonoalderson.com or any of the platforms at Jono Alderson. LinkedIn's probably the easiest at the moment. Thank you.
Down with the fellow kids.
This is awful. I hate this.
I won't remember that, honestly. TikTok, Jono. Emina, what's your SEO resolution for 2026 and where can people find you?
Well, before I go in, Jono, you have to have a TikTok account. I'm going to definitely follow you on TikTok. I'd love that. My resolution. I'm going to try not doing my usual, a shiny penny, kind of getting really excited about things that I see and kind of diving into something for a few months, being really interested, and then kind of fizzling it out and finding a new shiny penny. So I think I need to be better at that, really.
And where can people find you, Emina?
LinkedIn, mostly LinkedIn. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining again. Filipa, what's your SEO resolution for 2026?
Yes. I guess that we are here next year, sharing each other's, TikTok accounts for SEO advice. But no, seriously, I probably would say maybe I really liked the tip on also somehow building the community, and that the project that you are working on becomes this kind of go-to source on that specific topic. That's something that I don't feel like I really I've worked on, so that's probably my resolution for the next year.
Filipa, and where can people find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn mostly, or seolipa.com. Thank you.
Thank you. And Anthony, what's your number one SEO? What's your SEO resolution for 2026?
Where do we begin? Jono, see you on TikTok. For me, it's probably just going to be getting out to more SEO events and just hanging out with more SEOs and being in the community more. I would say I'm already quite active enough, but I think for next year, doing even more stuff, getting out there, doing more cool events like we did with SEO FOMO and a few others. So that would be my one for next year, is doing more cool SEO events. And where can people find me? Find me on LinkedIn. Always up for a chat, or at studiohawk.co.uk, or on my TikTok and Instagram at Anthony M. Barone. You can find me there as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Anthony, Filipa, Jono, Emina, and the rest of the 117 contributors to SEO in 2026. We'll be launching next week, of course. If you are listening to this, watching this in time, join us on December the 10th for the live stream launch of the book. We'll be broadcasting live at 1 p.m. UK time. And you can work out the rest of the times for 4 hours live with 64 of the contributors to the book joining us live. So if you can join us live, please do that. I've been your host, Bain, and you've been listening to the Majestic SEO panel. If you want to join us live next time, sign up at majestic.com/webinars. And of course, check out SEO in 2026 as well. Bye-bye for now.